Good evening. It is Thursday, August the 7th. It's about 7 o'clock p.m. I was going on with the skippers meeting, and we were having some connectivity issues. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and put this onto a recording for YouTube to share to the website, as I would have been reporting at the skippers meeting at 6:30 tonight. So once again, Shay Gibson with Leading Edge Weather, meteorologist here to discuss the starting time forecast all the way through Saturday night into Saturday morning. Let's go ahead and take a look, or get me down here to the corner. Let's look at the radar right now. What we have is a fairly stormy pattern this afternoon and into the evening, as we've seen two different waves. We've had short wave offshore, we've had inland troughing or short waving inshore sort of colliding each day with explosions of thunderstorms. And that's been sort of the norm. And what's caused that is high pressure in the Atlantic. What we usually have is robust Bermuda high pressure has weakened along the western side. So we're still getting that southerly flow, but we're getting that inland troughing they're sort of mashing together, and it's creating a lot of instability and a lot of explosive thunderstorm activity. So tomorrow looks pretty much the same in the summertime pattern, maybe not quite as many storms in the afternoon, but what we've seen a lot of these storms cancel out by late afternoon, evening. We're seeing them start to fizzle down now to our south, and then things die off for the night. We may have a little bit of convective activity just offshore overnight Friday night, so be aware that there may be a few isolated convective activities out there just off the coastline during nocturnal phasing, and that's coming from the Weather Service. I did speak to Blair Holloway at the National Weather Service Charleston. We talked about the possibility for severe weather. It doesn't look like there's anything severe, although you may see a shifty direction with a gusty surge from time to time near any of these storms. If we take a look at radar right now, we can sort of see that most of the offshore activity fizzles out, and all the heating elements are what's causing the storms today. Those are starting to die off as well. So just be aware that as inversions occur, we get that mid-level heating over the ocean that sort of inverts or comes down at the surface, and we get that heating element again, and we get a few storms that fire off over the coastline. So just be aware of that. Let's look at the WPC map. Friday afternoon, we have this front. Now, we've been talking about this the last couple of forecasts, where this front was going to sort of shift over the coast towards southern North Carolina by Friday night, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like this high pressure just off the coast. Let me go ahead and start Epic Pin here, and I can draw something on it. This high pressure is going to be bringing in that southerly flow, that clockwise southerly flow up the coast underneath this boundary. Now, as we get overnight, these winds will be south tomorrow, maybe a little tinge of south-southeast or south-southwest, depending on the tilt caused from storm influences. But overnight, we could get a little bit of that southwest jetting that lines up diagonally with the front that sometimes we see, which would cause the winds to come up into the low teens or whatnot. We're going to get into those winds in just a minute. I want to quickly talk about the Weather Service short-term Friday morning through Sunday, where they do hint at the nocturnal thunderstorm activity, primarily for coastal waters, but could impact the coastal areas each night. Hard to call the severe threat particularly significant. So just wanted to sort of zero in on that. Here's the storm grid. I'm going to go ahead and pick down here just off of Hilton Head as the race goes off of the jetties and down to just off of Tybee Island or the Savannah River entrance. And so the Weather Service calling Friday night, south winds 5 to 10, seas 2 to 3 feet. I think the seas will be more like 2 to maybe 3 feet, maybe 20 miles to 30 nautical miles offshore. So the period does look pretty good. And if we look at sail flow, we look at the Fripp nearshore buoy, that's Gray's Reef a little bit too far down, say the Fripp nearshore buoy, and we're looking at Friday night being, and I'm in line with this, about 2.5 feet. As we get into Friday night, 2 to 2.5 feet, somewhere in there. Now, the period and the fetch will be from the east-southeast, right? So that looks like about 10 seconds, which at 2 feet is going to be a pretty smooth ride. If you have some southerly winds, sort of lining up with that from the south-southeast, it makes it a little bit smoother. If it's from the south, a little bit of a roughy chop to it, even at 9 to 10 knots. But you can see a little bit of a nocturnal jet between 12, or I'd say 10 p.m., and maybe even a little bit earlier, all the way through about 5 or 6 a.m., where you might see some mid-teens and gusts from that nocturnal jetting. Now, the winds could go all the way southwest as you're heading south from Charleston down towards the Savannah River. So just be aware of that the direction could matter at nighttime just a little bit. But it looks like the period and the swell look pretty good. There is one concern, though, is that period, if we look at it again closely, from Friday night, it goes from about 10 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds to 2 feet from the east-southeast or even southeast. And as we get into the early morning hours, it looks like the period, the fetch switches all the way from the south-southeast. So that makes it shorter at about 4 seconds. So things may get a little bit rough as you head down towards Savannah as that direction from the swell heights actually shifts from east-southeast all the way down to south-southeast. That makes it a shorter period. So a little bit more of a bumpy ride as you go over into the early morning hours. That's anticipated by several different sites near the coast and even offshore. So just be aware of that. That would make it a little bit bumpy. Now keep in mind a few of those convective isolated showers as well. And that's shown here in the the WRF AWRF. This is high resolution model. We'll get more information tomorrow from the HER. It's a 3-kilometer model. As we get into Saturday morning early, we see a few showers just trying to get themselves together off the coast. This is very coarse for thunderstorm activity just off the coast for resolution, but it is a pretty good resolution model. In time for tomorrow for the final report, I'll take one more look and see maybe where those will fire off. I think more of them will fire off closer to that boundary, which is to our north, and then maybe even a little bit further offshore. So if you're seeing a lot more lightning activity further out, I would stay away from it and hug closer into the coastline. That's going to be more or less isolated to specific banding, maybe along the Florida Hatteras slope and into the Charleston area. And back to sail flow, if we go in, here is the course. I heard in the meeting that was going to be the long course. So the G15 right here is where the turn occurs. The rem line goes all the way down to, let's go down to Tybee, zoom in, and RWT right here. So the final buoy out off of Tybee is where this ends. And so that rem line from Charleston all the way down. I would imagine if you would like to chase a couple more knots going out a little bit further, that'd be fine. Just be aware that the storm activity may be a little further out there as well, so stay away from it. It's going to be pretty straightforward. I think by the time we start the race on Saturday at 4 o'clock, we'll probably have 10 to 14 knots of sea breeze from the south. There may be some of those south-southeasterlies as well, just inside the harbor. As you round the jetties and start to head down towards the south, the winds will be holding right between, I'd say, 10 to 12. Once you get outside the harbor, you may see a couple of extra knots as you go a little further offshore and to the south. Once you start making those long tacks to get down, and that will be the norm. Now, as we get into the evening, that may fade a couple of knots, and then the nocturnal jetting may rise again and come back up to those 10 to 14 knot values. So that should be the norm at some point overnight. It may even break around 2 to 4 a.m. where those winds back down to about 8 to 10, and then you're looking at modest winds again versus moderate. As the sun comes up Saturday morning, looks like winds will once again start to sort of gradually increase. By the time you get to noon, we're looking at 8 to 12 knots, and that's pretty much the forecast for the whole day on Saturday. It doesn't look like we're going to get too much beyond that unless we have any additional sea breeze enhancements. But then again, watch for those thunderstorms to start firing off late morning as you come back up towards the Charleston area, especially with that front being inland. And I think that'll do for this forecast. I'll go ahead and end it there for the report out for the skippers meeting, and I'll have another forecast sometime by late morning or noon tomorrow, and we'll go from there. Otherwise, the Weather Service thinks everything's okay as far as severe weather. It looks like it's a go. Just bring your rain jackets, and the water temperature is about 85.3 degrees. Y'all take care.